It was the 1095th day of the boy's imprisonment in this world. Thoughts of escape never left him for a second, no matter what he did. For a long time, he felt only suffering, disappointment, and despair. But when life became completely unbearable, a man appeared who lit the flame of hope in him. The guy thrusts the tip of his sword straight into the desert sand with a sharp movement. He swears that he will get this girl out of here, safe and sound, regardless of what he has to face on the way to his goal. This guy is chosen by heaven. He is a genius with a difficult fate. While chasing the girl, he was unlucky enough to be struck by lightning. A diligent student, a kendo master with zero experience in love affairs and having never even played a single game, he is still just a child, a stranger to everyone. Due to unforeseen circumstances, he began his journey through the game in another world, where the natural conditions were nightmarish and the terrain was inaccessible to any signal. This world is full of evil monsters and dangers. The only way to survive here is to continuously deal with monsters. With each passing moment, he must become stronger and stronger in order to achieve victory. He also needs to increase his experience points and increase his level more and more. In this world, he will constantly have to change weapons to more advanced ones in order to survive. In addition, he must unlock the secret mercenary system. Among them are characters such as warrior, assassin, or support. At first, the leveling system may seem quite simple, but this is only until the gods of murder stand in the way. For the first time, the boy felt such a piercing fear, as if his will had been completely suppressed. It's like a game of cat and mouse. It's as if God is preparing to deliver his final verdict. But there is one thing that is unclear. How is it that this guy, despite constantly stumbling, always gets back on his feet? And when he loses, for some reason he tries again? Nothing can stop him. And even when his life hangs by a thread, his will to fight does not weaken. This will activate the special blessing of the goddess Latona. Now, an additional 100 points are added to all of his attributes, such as strength, speed, damage, and endurance. What is it like to be a god? This guy's name is Chen Jill. At first glance, he is no different from his peers. In the eyes of other people, he is a diligent high school student. He was considered one of the most brilliant students, whose future, according to the teachers, was filled with brilliant prospects. There have never been any difficulties that he could not resolve. Until recently, everything changed when he fell in love with a troubled girl. Jill, do my homework for me. I'm going on a quest in the evening. She hands the guy her notebook. The guy is embarrassed to the point of a bright blush on his cheeks, and all he can do is quietly agree. You can hear the shouts of an angry teacher as the children are disturbing him while he is teaching his lesson. "Can I play this game with you too?" asks Jill. On the way out of the class, the girl agrees because they are exactly what they need support. Come to the newbie village in the evening. My ID is Sweetheart. The girl winks. On this day, oddly enough, it started to rain, and now getting home will be much more difficult than usual. Gil hopes that no one will suddenly need to turn on any extra electrical appliances today, because he would really like to play without any glitches. The guy still makes it home on time, and when he enters the house, he tells his mother that because of the weather, they were allowed to go home early today. "Take a rest for now. Dinner will be ready soon," she answers him with a kind smile on her face. "Can I order from delivery?" Jill asks. Mom doesn't mind and promises to leave food outside his door. At this point, Jilu is already eager to start playing. His mother is a little worried about this because she wouldn't want her son to play too much without rest. The main thing is that he at least doesn't forget to eat. He must have already arranged to play with someone today, maybe even a girl, since he was in such a hurry, she thought. Gradually, the weather outside the window worsened more and more, thickening the colors of the sky, which, filling with lead, became increasingly gloomy and ominous. No longer paying any attention to what was happening outside the window, the guy, already in his room, impatiently began unpacking the game. The VR game Cosmos is now the most popular among all his friends and acquaintances. All you need to play is one helmet. In fact, this is his first gaming experience, and Xiao Mei, the girl he likes so much, is probably already a real expert in this. But it's not scary. Jill can definitely handle it. He's confident in his abilities. Several messages from Mei distract him from looking at the helmet. The girl is already in the game and is really waiting for him. Without wasting any time, the guy connects to the game. He then pulls the helmet onto his head in anticipation. He laughs as he thinks that this will be their first date, albeit a rather unusual one. He closes his eyes and becomes completely immersed in the game. Gradually, a full connection occurs, and the world around him changes. The space around it looks quite unusual. The sound of falling droplets of water can be heard everywhere. Jill squints against the bright light and waves her hand away from the unexpected splashes. "Thank you for your purchase. Welcome to Cosmos." A brightly colored sign appears. "This looks pretty cool," Jill thinks. Cosmos is a survival game where you will experience the stories of myths from all countries, says a mechanical voice that seems to come from everywhere at once. In this world, dangers will lurk on all sides. Here you will find treasures and encounter wonders. Choose your class and begin the adventure. Mei mentioned a support, so Jill decides to go with that option. This time, he will choose a healer. The following free clothing items are available to you for purchasing the game, the voice continues. The guy decides that for their unusual first date, he needs something far from ordinary. So he's going to wear something a little more formal. The young man settles on a strict black classic suit, and within a few seconds, his look is complete. Jill is pleased with his new appearance. Now all he has to do is wait for the game to fully load. At this time in the real world, not everything is going so well. A red alert has been issued in the city, and all residents are asked to turn off electrical appliances to prevent accidents. One of the most powerful lightning bolts suddenly hits the house of the unsuspecting Gil and his mother. The guy didn't hear the warnings because he was already in the game and was too engrossed in it. So he calmly continued to spend time in virtual reality, not noticing the danger. He is oblivious to everything around him, completely caught up in the anticipation of his first date with Mei. What is happening is all the more unexpected for him. Lightning approaches him suddenly and without warning. The guy doesn't even have time to understand anything. The entire room is illuminated by a bright flash of light. Gil is thrown several meters above the bed and hangs in the air, held by an electric current. Light from the lightning strike shines through the windows of his house onto the street. Lightning continues to flash almost continuously, one after another. Something strange is happening in Gil's room, and in the place where he was just lying, only his helmet lies alone. At this time, his mother comes in to find out if he has turned off all the equipment. Where did he go? She wonders. She doesn't know that Gil has just received a new mission. Meanwhile, in the virtual world, monsters are getting closer and closer to the defenseless May. Her clothes are torn and stained, and her broken sword lies on the ground next to her as a useless piece of metal. "Someone, help me!" the girl screams desperately. The monsters freeze for a second nearby, blinded by some sudden flash of light from afar. Help is near. Jill resolutely approaches the girl with the clear intention of saving her. He burns monsters with just one fiery glance. May looks around in disbelief, not immediately realizing that she is saved. "Sorry I was late, but you have nothing to fear now," Jill says quietly, leaning over to the girl and helping her up. "You are my hero," she whispers gratefully. The guy leans lower, closing his eyes, and their lips reach towards each other. "Don't rush," he mutters discontentedly. "My face is already covered in drool," the guy says, and opens his eyes to immediately see a lizard sitting on him. Everything that happened turns out to be just a dream, and he opens his eyes in shock. "May!" the boy shouts, standing up abruptly and throwing off the nasty lizard. The lizard runs away, and Jill is left sitting there, confused, trying to figure out what the hell that was. The game has an amazing sense of immersion, he thinks. It's like electricity runs through your body, but it's a pretty pleasant feeling. Jill stands up to take a closer look at the area around her. Apparently, it's already in the game itself. Everything here is very realistic, even the feeling of unbearable heat under the scorching sun in the desert. The first time he was supposed to be loaded into a newbie village, but for some reason there was not a soul there, and it didn't look like a village at all. The guy decides to write to May and ask where he should go next. He types the girl's ID into the search bar and waits patiently, shielding his eyes from the sun with his hand. Player not found. Message appears on the game board. This is very strange. It shouldn't have happened, because Gil is sure that he correctly remembered the ID of the girl he likes. He decides to try to find the newcomer's village. Maybe May is already waiting for him somewhere nearby. Gil moves forward carefully, feeling every inch of the sandy surface, his boots sinking into the quicksand, leaving deep tracks behind. The guy's gaze was fixed on the horizon, trying to catch at least some kind of landmark, and beads of sweat were streaming down his tense face. Eventually, a map with his current location appears in front of him. Gil realizes that he was mistaken and that the newcomer's village is nowhere to be found nearby. "Where have I ended up?" he thinks, perplexed. The guy decides to try contacting technical support. It brings up the game window and patiently waits for the signal to finish loading. The heat in this desert feels not just like a high temperature, but like a dense, scorching wall that presses down on the entire body, preventing one from breathing or thinking calmly. In the bright rays of the sun, the sweat on his skin glistens like small drops of dew. But this dew does not bring refreshment, but only reminds him of the heat tormenting his body. The area you are located in is out of service area, according to a new message in the game window. Even customer service is out of reach in this forgotten place, Jill realizes. On a hot day, according to statistics, about 900 milliliters of sweat are released every hour. This means that fainting and dehydration are only a matter of time. Gil didn't expect the game to be so difficult and decided to leave this place to go to the real world and ask May in more detail about what was going on and how to play correctly. But a warning about unauthorized exit appears in the game table. Jill can't believe her eyes. The guy freezes, staring at one point. Is this a joke or something? He thinks and tries to click the exit button again. Extremely irritated, he nervously pokes the button a few more times, frowning. But all his attempts to leave the game lead to nothing. What unauthorized exit? The guy grows increasingly angry, continuing to aggressively press the button. Am I really locked in here? The message about unauthorized exit changes to one new task received, which shocks the guy even more. It is unclear what awaits him, but it is clear that he must survive, no matter what. But he just wanted to play with the girl he liked, so why did they lock him here? In impotent rage, he slams his fist into the sand, raising a cloud of dust and heat behind him. The guy had already tried everything possible, but he still couldn't get out. Will he stay here forever? Time crawls too slowly and painfully, and after 8 hours spent in the game, his faith in his own strength has completely dried up. But he was almost able to get used to the idea that he would never get out of here. This world is too similar to the real one, and the heat and thirst make me feel nauseous, and my head is spinning. If he doesn't come up with anything, he might as well die, and that's not at all inspiring. So he simply has to go in search of water. Jill bends down, picking up a previously inconspicuous small gray stone. Once upon a time, his grandfather watched a survival show, and it mentioned a very useful property of these stones, which are called slate. Such stones can often be found near a water source. This means that we can conclude that water is found where there is a lot of shale. Jill moves forward resolutely, trying to ignore the mercilessly blazing sun. He continues to move stubbornly, but if the guy could turn around, he would see a grinning wolf's face a few meters behind him. From under the sharp fangs of the beast, viscous saliva oozed and stretched downwards, leaving dirty, sparkling traces on the sand. The unsuspecting guy stubbornly moves towards his goal, finally reaching some cave. He hopes his guess about the shale was correct. In the absolute silence of the cave, the sound of falling drops of water can be clearly heard. Exhausted from the long journey, Gil immediately notices the reflections of water in the depths of the cave. Thirst has already become despair, which penetrates every thought, depriving one of hope, and making one forget about everything except water. His lips were tight from the dryness, and every movement caused pain and discomfort from the dry cracks that had formed. With his last bit of strength, the boy rushed into the depths of the cave, barely noticing a full well of water there. With trembling hands, he reaches for the life-saving liquid. Jill quickly and greedily dives face first into the well to finally quench her insane thirst. He, like a starving animal, bent over the well, greedily sucking in the water as if trying to drink every drop. It's nice to feel alive again, the boy thinks. Meanwhile, the wolf, at first slowly and cautiously, then faster and more decisively, approached the entrance to the cave. He did not run, but rather crept up, and his paws, covered with thick fur, stepped silently on the sand. Having quenched his thirst, The boy carelessly sprawled out on the cool floor of the cave, giving himself a little respite and time to think. He solved the water issue. Now he needs to figure out how to get out of here. The guy decides to look for something in the menu of this strange game again. He is sure that there must be at least some kind of clue in this desert. Jill opens the game map again, beginning to carefully examine every inch of it. But this map only shows the area he has already explored, which means he won't have any trouble at all. Just in case, he should carefully study all available system data. To his sincere regret, Gil realizes that his game stats are too low. He has no damage, no special abilities, and in case of danger, he will have to rely only on the speed of his own legs. The guy decides to see what kind of equipment he has here. The system offers him to receive a starter kit, and he agrees. It seems a little strange to him that a support character is supposed to have a sword, but he can't help but be happy about it. A weapon will definitely come in handy for safety. Gradually, confidence appears in the guy's eyes. He swings his sword a little clumsily, which is accompanied by the characteristic sound of an iron blade cutting through the air. The guy stands firmly on the ground, trying to find the balance necessary to control this weapon. Gil's grip on the hilt became more comfortable, and the tighter he gripped the sword, the more his determination grew, as if the weapon's power was being transferred to him. With a smooth swing, the sword glided through the air, leaving only a light trail behind it. With each swing, the sword became heavier, as if the weight of the earth was concentrated in its blade. The boy moved slowly and carefully through the cave, getting used to the feeling of the weapon in his hands. His movements with the sword became smooth and swift. The sword is much stronger than a real weapon, he thought at some point. Now Gil knew that the game had a lot of visualization, since even the wear level of his weapons was displayed right before his eyes. The silence of the cave is interrupted by the loud rumbling of his stomach. While there are no leads yet, the guy decides to go in search of food, otherwise he won't last long here. A vague sound from the depths of the cave interrupts his thoughts. He turns around and takes in the surrounding area with a tense gaze. Jill decides to go a little further and see what is there. The cave turns out to be more spacious than it seemed at first glance. He's already dealt with his thirst. Now he can look around. The guy's attention is drawn to a white bone lying on the cave floor. Slowly, he looks up and can't believe his eyes. Right in front of him lies a huge pile of animal bones. He doesn't understand where she could have come from. The boy bends down, cautiously picking up one of the bones. The marks of someone's huge and sharp teeth are clearly visible on it. He had recently seen something like this in one of the books. Things are bad, Jill realizes. We can't stay here any longer. It's becoming too dangerous. Before he could finish this thought, he heard the sound of paws hitting the ground of the cave as a monster ran straight towards him. The wolf pounces on the guy in seconds, viciously snapping its sharp-toothed jaw right in front of his face. Gil's eyes widen in fear, and his breathing becomes labored. However, despite the speed of the wolf's attack, he manages to duck at the last second and avoid the fatal bite. He is forced to somersault in the air to avoid the furious attack and save his life. In front of him stands a level 5 desert wolf. Its advantage is durability, and it can reach speeds of up to 15 kilometers per hour. In addition, when pursuing prey, the animal can reach speeds of up to 65 kilometers per hour. Gil sees that the difference between them is as much as 3 levels, which means a very high chance of defeat and 200% damage for him.
You can feel it in the floor, boys. Hey. Listen. Whoa, oh, oh, oh. Lying in the front row, saying you believed in everything I played, sharing secrets in the back door, smoke, helping at the promises we made. But when you stormed and tore my branches, you were ghosting fixes in the sun, drinking to my downfall with their glasses, holding what we had just for fun. Fake friends say, like vapor in the morning, clear as the light. I see their shame. I was breaking while they toasted to the story, using my crafts to carve their names. But my heart keeps turning pain into a chorus. I rise again from every flame. Let the fire burn the mask right off their faces. Unlock our king from the embers of my name, from the embers of my name. I've been wrestling with the mirror, asking, was it Lee who wore the lie? Did I barter all my boundaries just to keep a handful by my side? They were cheering when I stumbled, calling my confession just again. But I found a quiet kindness in forgiving who I was back in. From faith and faith, like vapor in the morning, clear as the light. I see their shade. I was breaking while they toasted to the story, using my crafts to carve their legs.
So there really are monsters in this game, he thinks. This wolf is much faster than Jill. The guy understands that there is no point in running anymore. This means he has no choice but to fight this monster. The young man resolutely draws his sword from the sheath hanging on his belt. If he loses to this creature, then only a painful death awaits him and nothing more. The guy's eyes show a grim determination to fight to the very end, no matter what the cost. In his first year of high school, Gil served as the head of the Kendo Club. His diligence and natural talent for fencing, as well as strict discipline, made him a recognized leader. The goal of each new training session was to achieve perfection. Every movement had to be precise, and every action had to be verified, down to the last detail. Kendo training was like a dance, where every movement was part of a coordinated and rhythmic action. Gil became the youngest sixth dan master in his country. The reason for such diligence in studying martial arts was quite simple. In her youth, Gil's mother was an avid fan of the sport. Even then, she was obsessed with Kimura, a very popular kendo star. That is why the boy began to practice this martial art from early childhood. When he first started studying, it seemed to him that it would be enough to simply wear nice clothes and fight pompously. But as he delved into his training a little further, he realized that the movements were not at all simple. And standing opposite an opponent dressed in uniform, it turns out that your heart is pounding wildly and your breathing is ragged. A veil of horror envelops you in a dense cocoon that is impossible to break through. At such moments, even the body can hardly be forced to move. And it is precisely this weakness that is the source of the horror the boy experiences. The only way to get rid of this weakness is continuous training. Only constant work on yourself and overcoming laziness will help. So it happened that the guy spent all his free time in the dojo, which had no air conditioning, rehearsing every move many times. Constantly losing, receiving serious injuries, training and making swing after swing, he continuously moved towards his goal. The training was like meditation, where the mind and body merged into one, and the spirit grew stronger and stronger with each passing moment. Every training session was a battle with myself, with my weaknesses and insecurities. This continued until Gil became the youngest master with a 6th dan. These trainings brought him a lot of benefits. After all, in a world where the law of the jungle reigns, it is impossible to predict how terrifying your next opponent will be. The boy gripped the hilt of the sword tighter, waiting for the right moment to attack. It's time, he understood. Gil is confident that this wolf's main mistake will be underestimating his opponent. For this reason, he is shocked to the core when he realizes that his attack was completely useless. The guy can't believe his eyes. Not a single blow from his sword deals any damage to this monster. He tries to attack again, but all his attempts are unsuccessful. The wolf's next blow was so strong that the guy was thrown straight into the wall and was unable to stay on his feet. The blow pierced his entire body, pain spreading from the point of impact throughout his entire body, knocking out his breath and sapping his strength. The guy's eyes were full of determination. His movements were quick, precise, and full of indomitable strength. The game's faceless voice reminds us that the desert wolf has extremely powerful armor, and its only weak spot is its belly. Jill realizes that there is no point in hitting anywhere other than the beast's belly. The weak point is clear, but he is too fast and always tries to bite you to death. The fight continued, each of them looking for any weak spot in the other's defense. Gil is just defending himself, and the wolf is gradually pushing him towards the wall. With every moment, he is getting closer and closer. If this continues, sooner or later, the guy will lose. Gil felt the fatigue building in his muscles, but the adrenaline gave him a little more strength to fight. Is he really going to die in this cave? The health reserve is at the limit, and treatment is needed. The inscription appears in the air again. Gil finally figured out how to get to the belly of this elusive beast. At this time, the wolf, with anticipation, slides its claws along the stone floor of the cave, thereby producing unpleasant and ear-splitting sounds. If the guy's plan works, he will finally be able to finish off this creature. With these thoughts, Jill rushes into the attack with the last of her strength. Several bright red drops of blood fall onto the cave floor. Blood runs down the shirt of the boy who allowed the wolf to sink its fangs into his shoulder. In this way, Gil distracted the monster in order to wait for the right moment to strike. The blade of the sword quickly slides across the animal's belly and rips through its body. An expression of grim satisfaction freezes on the guy's face. Finally, everything worked out, and the victory was his. The plan to intentionally let him bite me to lower my guard clearly worked. A sign appears in front of the guy, stating that the desert wolf has been killed, and 6,000 experience points have been received, as well as level 5 has been reached, and 25 skill points are available. After reading, the inscription disappears, and the guy is enveloped in a bright cocoon of light. After gaining a new level, his wounds immediately healed, which is good news. The hidden level trading platform system is being launched. This leaves the guy extremely confused. It's important to remember that it's in the game world, and it's common for games to award experience points for killing creatures, and for leveling up to award points for distribution. However, it is not entirely clear what the trading platform itself is. Jill decides to look at her and find out everything. Several bright windows with information appear before the guy's eyes. He sees equipment called Bloody Calamity, with quite powerful stats, but there is much more useful besides that. Ritual Imperial Halberd. The Beauty of the Black Knight. Golden Glory. This is the trading platform. The guy understands. A certain level is required to unlock the inventory, and purchasing items on the marketplace consumes the level. What's extremely unusual here is that in addition to weapons and armor, you can also buy household equipment and electrical appliances. Jill doesn't understand who would buy household appliances in the game, especially for so many levels, and the same mercenary system generally requires 100 levels. The guy decides to see what this system consists of. He presses a button, and suddenly, a girl in a mask appears right in front of his face. Jill looks at her in surprise. It takes him a while, but he realizes that what he sees in front of him is just a hologram. Gradually, other figures appear next to her. A warrior who looks quite intimidating. A tank whose primary role is to absorb damage and prevent other allies from being attacked. A magician who can change the world around him according to his will. An assassin with a special talent for killing. The mercenary system in this game is quite diverse, Jill understands. But then the guy's gaze falls on one of the figures that he had not noticed earlier. There is support in front of him. Who came up with such a helpless class? Jill is indignant. At this rate, he'll be stuck here forever. At this time, the system notifies the guy that with his current level, it is possible to unlock only everyday goods. Gil is irritated because he remembers it very well. Everyday goods have been unlocked at 5 levels, and the activation was successful. The guy gets 5 sugar buns and 3 packs of cola. Now he can survive for some time on the purchased food and not die of hunger. However, he still needs to get out of here somehow, and Gil asks the system to show him the characteristics window. Therefore, the guy will have to temporarily rely on increasing his characteristics, because they will directly affect his future fate. Armor determines survivability. Magic affects damage from magical attacks. Strength increases physical damage. Endurance improves defense, and agility significantly improves movement speed. In the fight with the desert wolf, the difference between them was 5 levels, but in strength and speed, he far surpassed the guy. And if in the future he encounters other beast monsters, it would be good for him to become faster and increase his damage to win. The guy chooses the right combination, and now 5 points of armor will make him more durable. 10 points of strength will help him better withstand monster attacks, and the remaining points will increase his speed. After strengthening the characteristics, the body also changes. It is filled with strength and becomes even more flexible. It is a rather pleasant feeling of strengthening the whole body. Suddenly, the guy hears a loud howl behind him and turns around. Right in front of him stands a whole pack of wolves, growling angrily. And this is very useful because it will give you the opportunity to evaluate the results of the upgrade. "Today, your lair will be razed to the ground," the boy cries out. Without a moment's hesitation, the whole pack of wolves pounced on him, intending to make themselves a tasty dinner. With each attack and parry, the cave filled with the sounds of combat, such as metallic clanging, growling, or paws hitting stone. However, this time, Gil only needed one deft move to cut off the head of any of these monsters. With his current damage, these wolves' armor won't save them from death. The wolves' brightly shining eyes are filled with rage and bloodlust. With each swing of the sword, the pack's numbers rapidly decrease. The increase in characteristics also improved the sword art. This guy, now even faster and more agile, easily dodged bites and claws, delivering accurate blows. The pack of wolves watched in bewilderment as the boy soared to the very ceiling before his next attack. He prevents the wolves from surrounding him, constantly changing his position and striking, knocking the animals out of action with each movement. The blade of his sword, rising and falling, blocks their path, leaving them no chance to break through to him and attack. The sword strikes are precise and deadly, hitting the target every time. With the increased level, killing monsters is now much easier. After this battle, the guy reaches level 15 and receives additional points. By the time the battle ends, night has fallen outside. The guy decides that while it's cool outside, he can try to look for a way out of here. He steps out of the cave, and his foot immediately hits something soft. The guy's eyes widen in surprise. He looks up and sees a huge number of bloody wolf corpses scattered around the cave. Jill can't understand why they are all dead. Who did this? He bends over one of the slain animals, seeking more information. The guy's attention is drawn to a sound coming from somewhere above. He looks up, and intuitively, his hand already reaches for the sword. A strange and rather frightening picture appears before his eyes. Nearby, Jill sees the silhouette of an unusual man who at that very moment is tearing apart huge monsters with his bare hands. Who is this? The guy thinks tensely, trying to get a better look. He is too far away from the man to see his face. He mentally figures out what to do next. The guy decides to head in the direction where he saw the silhouette of this man. He doesn't find anyone, but judging by the corpses of the wolves, there was definitely someone here. There's no doubt about it. Maybe he was also trapped in this strange game? The guy uses a sword to lift one of the corpses to examine it in more detail. It was as if all the blood had been sucked out of this wolf. Doubts begin to creep into the guy's head. Was it really another player who resorted to such brutality? Gil quickly realizes that he was wrong in his assumptions. Another sign warns him that an unidentified living creature of medium danger and hostility level has been detected. The creature is a highly spiritual being and is about to attack. The guy listens intently. Thanks to this, he is able to choose the right moment to strike. A few drops of bright blood drip from his sword. He managed to wound the new monster that had gotten too close. However, this reduced the durability of his weapon by a full 25%. The guy realizes that it wasn't a human who killed the wolves. The new monster slowly and smoothly approaches him. Jill realizes that this fight will not be as easy as the previous one. This monster is much stronger and of a much higher class than those wolves. He and these desert wolves are completely different opponents. The guy grips the hilt of his sword more comfortably. If his stats hadn't increased after leveling up, he would have been dead long ago. Even now, the wounds from the claws have not yet completely closed. Jill watches in amazement as the new monster quickly repairs the damage done to it. He grew a new arm to replace the severed one with astonishing ease, as if it were no effort at all. A notification appears stating that the name of this monster is Wandering Executor. The ruler who lives in the Rarknaya desert has perfect speed, where he is the top of the food chain and feeds on the blood of any living creature. A man cannot hide if the wandering master is on the hunt. Gil thought he was prepared to meet all sorts of monsters in this world, but the chilling power of this creature seemed to nail him to the ground. This inexplicable power seems to take control of his body. For the first time, the guy experiences such inexplicable horror. Now he realizes that the hunt for him has already begun. This makes him feel some degree of despair. The new monster has no intention of wasting time and immediately rushes into attack. His movements are lightning fast, sharp, and precise. Gil clenches his teeth nervously, a drop of salty sweat trickling down his tense face. Meanwhile, the wandering master is already reaching out his hands to him. At the last second, the guy manages to dodge the attack. He dodges, blocks, and parries every blow of the monster, using all his experience and skill. You know, I don't care, he thinks. Jill decides to take this fight with honor and not let the monster kill her. He will no longer give in to intimidation. The monster moves like the elusive wind, dodging the heavy blows of the sword. His movements are bestial, chaotic. He does not adhere to any rules and does not spare his opponent. The guy can't seem to keep up with the monster's speed. Just now he was right in front of my face, and now he's already flashing somewhere behind my back. The Wandering Executor seeks to corner Gil, using fear and terror as his weapons. The guy fails to parry another powerful blow and is thrown to the side. Gil falls to the ground, breathing heavily and disoriented. The impact with the stone surface causes him severe pain that penetrates his entire body. At the last second of his fall, he manages to brace himself against the floor with the blade of his sword. He needs a few seconds to catch his breath. Now he understands exactly what high speed this monster's game system had been warning him about. The guy quickly comes to his senses and prepares to enter the fight again. But his strength is gradually leaving him, and it is becoming more and more difficult to stay on his feet. Halu Kalu? The monster says something he doesn't understand. Before Gil can even comprehend anything, the ruler is already right next to him again. The monster's heavy fist slams into his stomach like a hammer. The guy's face contorts in pain, and he drops his own sword. The blow bends him in half, and the guy grabs the injured area. Jill leans down helplessly and coughs up her own blood. This blow could well have taken his life. But what is this monster up to? If you look closely, you can see a sinister smile on the face of the ruler. He delivers another of his most powerful blows. The guy falls to the ground again, clenching his teeth in pain. Halukalu, the monster repeats again and hands the guy his sword. Why is he doing this? Jill wonders. It is unclear what this terrifying creature wants from him. In response to the silent question, the monster raises his hand to his neck, demonstrating a completely understandable action. He suggests that Gil try to kill him again. Now he looks like a cat that has caught a mouse and is in no hurry to eat its prey. He wants to play with his victim to his heart's content before he starts eating. So the guy takes the sword, and the fight continues until dawn. Once again, Gil falls to the ground, his weapon's durability already reduced by 80%. This monster is too fast and cannot be hit with normal attacks. Gil can't do anything as the executor grabs him by the collar of his shirt and drags him towards him. The monster's hand reaches for his throat. He grabs the guy by the neck and lifts him into the air with one hand, as if he weighs nothing at all. Man, the monster says mockingly. Can he even talk? Jill is perplexed. A man as weak as a maggot. The monster continues to mock. The guy comes to his senses from the shock, and with one movement takes away the monster's hand again in order to free himself. He quickly moves away to a safe distance. This monster is like a disgusting insect, he is sure. The ruler watches with complete calm as his hand regenerates. The last time I came across interesting people was about 100 years ago, he laughs. You're interesting too, Jill replies angrily. It had been a long time since he felt his blood boil. His family, friends, and past life are very far from him now. Therefore, Jill has no moral right to abandon them and die here. Wait for me, the guy screams. Thoughts about his loved ones give him new strength. Once again, the guy's figure is enveloped in a warm, bright light. His eyes burn with rage and a relentless desire to win. The light grows larger and stronger, completely enveloping the figure of the young man. Gil's hair seemed electrified. His will to fight activated the special blessing of the goddess Latona. The guy gets plus 100 points to all his attributes, such as speed, strength, damage, and endurance. With renewed strength, he raises his sword above his head again, ready to continue the hard battle. Now you look like someone with power, the monster tells him. This makes the young man even more angry. Now his movements are even faster and more precise, and his gaze is full of courage and unwavering will. The monster continues to laugh, its laughter echoing throughout the space, like a mockery of the youth's desperate efforts. Gil launches into another attack, his sword flashing like lightning, cutting through the air with mad fury. He unleashes a series of quick strikes, trying to break through the monster's defenses, but his attacks continue to bounce off the monster, as if it were some kind of stone. This causes his sword to finally break, disintegrating into a pile of small, useless pieces. But this does not stop the guy. He throws the now unnecessary weapon aside and continues the battle. Now his own fists become his weapon. He attacks the monster with incredible fury, delivering quick and precise blows to the body, trying to find weak spots. He intends to change this monster's established ideas about people. The battle becomes even more intense and fierce, with huge amounts of dust from the desert sands flying into the air. The dust slowly settles, creating a thick haze through which the sun's rays barely penetrate, and the guy's gaze cannot find the monster in the place where he stood a second ago. Jill, breathing heavily, looks around, trying to catch even the slightest sign of the monster's presence. Suddenly, he feels a light breeze behind him, and his instinct screams at him about danger. The guy turns around sharply, but does it too late. The monster appears out of nowhere, its clawed paws raised to strike and hit the target. "Man, you weak little maggot," the ruler mocks again. The boy falls to his knees next to him, exhausted, unable to get up. Is it really impossible for me to defeat him? He thinks desperately. With a loud laugh, the monster rises into the air right above his head. A bluish glow of his power begins to gather in the palm of the ruler. The creature's appearance is transformed, becoming even more eerie and frightening. "Farewell, man," he says, looking down at the boy. Gil can only watch helplessly as the monster gathers its strength for the final blow. At this moment, the guy is pierced by a feeling of helplessness and the understanding that all his efforts were in vain. He froze, unable to move, realizing that this was the final, fatal blow. The executor waves his hand, and a deadly wave of energy bursts out of his palm, striking right where the guy is. The shockwave sends him flying into the air, spraying drops of his blood everywhere. For a moment, there is a deafening silence, broken only by the whistling wind, allowing the sound of the falling body to be lost in the chaos. Am I going to die? That's the last thing Jill thinks before she loses consciousness. The player is dead, the new sign reads. Some time passes before Jill suddenly wakes up again. He is on a bed in a room that is completely unfamiliar to him. The guy is overcome with nervous laughter. Am I still alive? He wonders. Is he out of the game? Jill doesn't understand at all what's happening to him. Where is it located anyway? There is still a game window in front of him, which means he is still locked here. The realization of this again makes the guy feel despondent. However, it is obvious that he was killed by that monster and now suddenly lies here, safe and sound. How is it possible that he doesn't even have a single wound on his body? He wonders, lifting his shirt and examining himself for any unhealed injuries. Suddenly, the door to the room opens. A beautiful girl in a light dress carefully enters inside, holding something tightly in her hands. "Have you come to your senses yet?" she asks in surprise. Gil looks back at her in bewilderment, frozen in the position in which he examined the lack of damage on his body. He greets awkwardly, immediately tugging his t-shirt down. "Grandpa Uba, he's awake!" the girl screams loudly. Am I really in a newbie village? The boy thinks. At this time, Ube's grandfather is busy planting vegetation on the street near the house. He looks up when he hears his name being called. Quite quickly, the man returns back to the house. "You say you were killed by that monster?" After listening to the boy's story, he clarifies. "Yes, it went right through my chest," Jill confirms. He learns that Ube's grandfather recently went hunting as usual and accidentally found him. It turns out he was on death's door, but somehow, miraculously, managed to survive. However, he is not in the game at all, and not at all in the newbie village. This is not a game at all. The guy is surprised because he is sure that this is a game world and there is some kind of mistake. An idea comes to him on how to prove he is right. The guy brings up the game window to show it to his new acquaintances and convince them. The girl and Ube look closely at the place the guy points to. Jill diligently shows them the taskbar, equipment, system status bar, and map. However, he has not yet realized that these two cannot see anything that he is trying to show them. Gil complains that there is no connection with the outside world here at all, and he can't even find Xiaomei's ID. That's why he doesn't know how to get out of here. "I want to go home!" the boy cries out in despair. He is not ready to hear Grandpa Oob's answer. No one knows how to get out of the Latona Desert, the man tells him. How is this even possible? And how did you even get here? Jill is perplexed. The girl explains to him that several years ago, while on the mainland of Bergama, she and her grandfather were caught in a thunderstorm while hunting a titanosaur and woke up here. Grandfather believes that they are in the legendary Latona Desert, where even the gods are trapped. Freedom can only be achieved by finding the Herpy Ancestral Hall. According to legend, the part of the desert where it is located is a never-ending labyrinth, and no one has ever managed to return from there alive. Gradually, everyone who comes here accepts their fate and gives up, not even hoping to find the Hall of the Ancestors, because instead of going to certain death, it is better to live this life well. Every year, someone ends up in this desert. But Grandpa Uba had never heard of anyone getting out of here. He advises the guy to come to terms with it and later go for a walk around town with his granddaughter Sally. Gil is still convinced that this is impossible and that he is in fact in some kind of game. The boy's thoughts are interrupted by the appearance of a new task sign. The Revenge of the Untimely Deceased Herpy, reads the inscription. It is now clear that thanks to the protection of Herpy's spirit, Gil was able to resurrect, and in return, he must help him unlock the seal. You need to find a temple in the Latona Desert, defeat the monster Nabulusi, who guards the seal, and free Herpy. As a reward, in addition to the seal, he will receive the key to the Latona Desert. Even after all this time, Gil still doesn't understand why he ended up here. However, now he at least has a clear goal. You just need to find the Temple of Herpy and complete the mission. When the time comes, he will definitely find a way to get out of here. The guy thinks about all this leisurely, comfortably settled on the green grass under the warm sun. Sally soon joins him. She searched for him for half a day and was only now able to find him. Jill justifies himself by saying that he always goes out for a walk when he has nothing better to do. The grass, lush and green, breaks off as if by magic, giving way to a dry desert. Sally tells him that the place they are now in is surrounded by desert on all sides. So wherever you go, the desert will be everywhere. Jill looks around sadly. It looks like finding the temple will be really difficult and will take quite a while. He must leave this place at any cost. Sally is sure that no temple exists and that Jill will simply die if she leaves here. But even her words can't stop him. Gil had already died once, and he would find that temple, no matter what it took. He leaves, urging the girl to return back to the city with him. They slowly walk back, discussing what happened along the way. "Do you really want to go look for that temple?" Sally asks, upset. Gil is 100% confident in his positive answer. The girl worries that the desert is teeming with dangerous monsters that an ordinary person cannot cope with. The guy believes that his fighting abilities are quite outstanding, and he will be able to cope with this problem. Their conversation is interrupted by flashes of someone's unusual purple power. This is the first time Jill has seen something like this. A few steps away from the couple, a loud explosion thunders, raising dust and small stones into the air. The cloud of dust raised by the explosion, like a giant curtain, momentarily obscures everything around, and the sound still rings in the ears, making the heart beat faster and the body tense in anticipation. Through this ringing, leisurely steps can be heard. A group of 3 people, unknown to Gil, walk towards them with satisfied smiles on their faces. The fish is hooked. One of them laughs, smiling bloodthirstily. Coughing from the dust, Jill covers her mouth with her hand, trying to see the source of the sound. He realizes that he needs to figure out what's going on before he rushes into battle. Gil glances at Sally, and his eyes widen in surprise as he sees her body engulfed in bright flames, as if she herself had become a living fire. This fire does not appear natural, but rather a manifestation of her inner strength, fierce and unstoppable. "So here we meet again, Sally," the same guy grins. "You again, Boban?" the girl replies discontentedly. Jill doesn't understand who it is and why they attacked them. "I completely forgot to tell you. The robbers will be more terrible than any monsters," Sally answers him. "They don't want to hunt in the desert, so they rob other people," she says, with bitterness and hatred in her voice. These worthless creatures live by killing their own kind. The bandit leader is once again enveloped in that bright purple glow of his power. What kind of ability is this? Jill is perplexed. Together with the girl, he freezes in front of the robber, ready for any turn of events. The leader laughs again that today Sally will not escape as easily as the last time they met. The girl is once again enveloped in the fiery glow of her power. "Go back to Grandpa Uba. I can handle this," she shouts to Gil. At this time, Ube stands calmly near their house, watching the changing weather. Looks like the storm is starting again. The man, however, remains calm as he looks at the approaching dark clouds. Suddenly, a clap of thunder, like an explosion, breaks the silence, followed by lightning that pierces the night sky with frightening speed. The man walks slowly forward. All he can think about is that his granddaughter Sally should have returned home by now. Meanwhile, tensions between Sally, Gil, and the bandits only increase. The gang leader reminds him that the girl's strength cannot harm him, no matter how hard she tries. He demands that she come with him, and then maybe he will spare this idiot next to her. "Don't even dream about it," the girl shouts back. "Then don't blame me for being rude," Boban smirks. Sally is still trying to send Gil home, assuring him that she will figure out how to stop these bandits. "No need," the guy quietly answers her. The girl is surprised and puzzled by this answer. Gil explains that the word escape is unfamiliar to him. Even though they have only known each other for a short time, he is definitely not the kind of person who would abandon his comrade in difficult times. The guy's fiery speech is interrupted by Boban's hand, which rushes straight at his face. Jill is unprepared for such a sudden attack and does not have time to repel the attack. The shockwave from the attack sends Gil flying backwards, slamming his back into a nearby tree as Sally watches helplessly. Boban is pleased with himself and does not miss the opportunity to mock the guy and show his superiority. Here, we're used to proving things not with words, but with force. The bandit leader smirked, his voice full of venom and smugness, demonstrating his strength and power. He doesn't expect Jill to grab his wrist with a confident grip, removing his hand from her face. The robber was sure that his opponent was defeated and frightened, but this turned out to be completely wrong. Is attacking from behind the enemy the force you're talking about? Jill asks, effortlessly continuing to hold the bandit's wrist. Boban, still stunned by Gil's confidence and sarcasm, doesn't have time to react when Gil, without letting go of his wrist, delivers a powerful punch straight to his face. The bandit jumps back in disgust, finally freeing his wrist from the guy's tight grip. Finding himself in relative safety, Boban clutches his injured arm in frustration. "This guy dislocated my wrist," he realizes with amazement. Gil thinks that this robber is too fast, because even despite the increased agility points, he was unable to notice the attack in time and react correctly. Sally looks at Gil with concern, but at the same time, she tries to focus on Boban's actions. "What do you want?" she asks with indignation in her voice. "I've told you many times to be my girlfriend," the robber answers her. He just can't understand that this is impossible. Is he so mad because he wants you to be his girlfriend? Jill asks a blushing Sally, to which she sheepishly agrees. This scene makes Boban decide that Gil is her boyfriend, and this thought makes him furious. Sally replies that Jill is just her friend, but no one believes her. What a pathetic excuse. Boban sighs. He demands that Gil come to him and fight man to man. If the guy manages to defeat him, then Boban will leave the girl alone. Another sign in front of Gil's eyes notifies that a new quest is available, which consists of defeating the Shadow Swordsman, and as a reward, he will receive the ability Shadow Madness. In addition to the ability, the reward will also be the lost map of the Latona Desert. The guy understands that if he can win and get the card, then there will be a real chance to get out of here. So he accepts the challenge with confidence. Boban is pleased with this answer. There is not just mockery in his voice, but also anticipation, as if he is already confident of his victory. At this time, his henchmen are watching the development of events with interest, confident that it is all about jealousy. Sally doubts that Gil will be able to defeat the most powerful shadow swordsman in this city. Is this swordsman that strong? The boy asks. The girl replies that every swordsman who uses the power of darkness has an advantage in speed. Moreover, the power of his attacks is simply stunning, and the blade, shrouded in shadows, has enormous destructive power. Gil is not afraid of this fight, or death, because he has already died once. He is confident in his abilities. The guy is not going to die in this fight, but to win and get out of here. He still can't understand how his perfectly ordinary life turned into this. He reassures himself that he just needs to win this fight, and then he will get the card and leave this hated place. However, he never manages to land a blow because the shadow swordsman always slips away at the last second. Bo-Ban, as if dissolving into thin air, instantly appears in another place, barely managing to concentrate his force into the blow. His next attack misses again, leaving only the quiet sound of a foot hitting empty air. The shadow swordsman, like a creature from a nightmare, moves with incredible speed and grace. His movements seem lightning fast and unpredictable, as if he could teleport. Is this really all the guy Sally likes can do? Bo-Ban laughs loudly. Gilu finds it strange that the shadow swordsman only dodges but doesn't attack. Sally decides to go with the bandits and send Gil after grandfather Ube because she is convinced that only he is strong enough to win this fight. But the guy categorically disagrees with this decision. In any case, the battle can no longer be avoided, but if he can win, then they will leave this forgotten place. Sally doesn't understand him. After all, how can victory in a fight and the opportunity to leave here be connected? At this time, the guy is thinking about how, from the very beginning of the game, everything that has happened has been devoid of any connection or logic. After death, he was miraculously resurrected, and now suddenly a notification has appeared that he can only get the card by defeating Bo-Ban. It all looks like a simple coincidence, but for some reason it seems to him that there is someone behind all of this. Bo-Ban is eager to continue the battle. He thrusts his sword deep into the ground and begins to sneer again. Scared? But it's too late to retreat, the robber laughs. Jill replies that the only one who is afraid here is Bo-Ban, because all he does is constantly dodge attacks. It's just no fun fighting an unarmed piece of shit, the swordsman shrugs. Since we have a duel, let everything be fair. With these words, he throws the sword, in one smooth motion, straight into Gil's hands. It was a quick and accurate throw, the robber wielding his weapon with grace and ease. The guy catches the sword, immediately feeling the cold of the steel and the weight of the hilt. Bo-Ban clarifies that he doesn't want Sally and his subordinates to think that he is simply beating up an unarmed man. His colleagues are surprised that their boss is so kind today. Sally just watches what is happening in silence and despair. Jill replies that the robber doesn't immediately look like he plays by the rules, because the memory of that vile attack from behind is still fresh. I just react quickly in a critical situation, the shadow swordsman justifies himself. Now they will fight in a fair fight. No matter how exactly, Gil must win to get the card. Bo-Ban intends to show him the true power of the shadows. Gil understands that his future and his chance to get out of this damned place depend on this fight. The guy makes a swift lunge, pointing the tip of the sword towards the enemy. Bo-Ban grins smugly. He makes a sharp dash forward, like a shadow sliding across the ground. Jill, seeing Bo-Ban advancing, does not lose her composure. The fight is gaining momentum, and the tension is increasing with every second. Gil's sword, describing fast and precise circles, repels Bo-Ban's attacks. The robber, without retreating an inch, continues to circle around the enemy, his movements becoming ever faster and more unpredictable. Jill tries to anticipate every attack of her opponent, constantly analyzing his movements. But the shadow swordsman uses his magic to create illusions and deceive the enemy, distracting their attention and making it difficult to defend. These illusions force him to be on guard all the time, not allowing him to relax for a second. Dark shapes dart around Gil like ghosts, giving the impression that he is fighting several opponents at once. Gil feels his strength gradually fading, and he begins to gasp for breath, his hands shaking from the constant tension. Things are bad, the guy realizes. Sally calls out to him in a panic, but doesn't have time to warn him. The Shadow Swordsman strikes. Gil immediately loses 300 experience points and has only 700 left. Drops of blood slowly drip from Boban's sword onto the ground. He is confident that Gil cannot defeat him. However, he cannot give up and decides to use his healing abilities. Therefore, he agrees to the game's offer to use his ability. He understands that he needs to use all his resources to survive. With his ability, he stops bleeding and restores his strength a little, returning experience points. Seeing this, the Shadow Swordsman and his minions begin to mock even more. Some pathetic priest isn't worthy of fighting me. This is Boban speaking. Are you afraid of embarrassing yourself by losing to the priest in front of Sally? Jill laughs in response. This drives the bandit leader into a state of rage. Jill demands that they stop wasting time on talking and continue the fight. Since that's the case, Boban intends to show him the true power of the Shadow Swordsman. His shadow seems to break away from his body, and the next moment, several exact copies of him appear next to him. Gil, stunned by this sight, is momentarily speechless. Boban's doubles surround the boy from all sides. Like a pack of hungry wolves, they move smoothly and silently, their swords glittering in the dim light, and they, like puppets, await their master's command. Jill tries to comprehend what is happening and understand how the Shadow Swordsman's attacks are currently taking place. It won't be so easy to defeat him now. It makes me sick that I took pity on you when I found out you were a priest, Boban says with hatred. But you wanted to know what my true strength was, and since that was the case, I would let you see the Shadow Swordsman's famous attack that could not be reflected before I died. So let's fight, Jill answers without a trace of doubt. He is the first to rush into attack. The Shadow Swordsman thinks the guy is too arrogant. He allows his doubles to play with the enemy a little. One of them, as if obeying an invisible order, quickly advances towards Gil. The guy stands confidently on his feet, preparing to do everything possible to parry the blow. He feels that if he loses concentration for even a second, he could get seriously injured. The guy prepares his sword, trying to anticipate the direction of the attack, and grips the hilt tighter. The double, seeing his readiness, decides not to waste time and rushes at Gil with wild fury. The guy, armed with patience and determination, blocks the blow, and his sword, meeting the blade of the double, makes a loud, nasty screech. The double attacks again, but this time his attacks become even faster and more unpredictable, as if he is trying to confuse Gil, to make him make a mistake. All that remains for the guy is to try to reflect the powerful blows of the Shadow One. Realizing that a direct attack will not produce results now, he decides to go into deep defense, focusing on blocking the double's attacks. He understands that he needs to hold out, wait for the moment, and find a weakness in his defense. However, this double is too strong, and it is difficult for the guy to repel even his own blows. But there are still two of them. The guy almost misses a blow from one of the doubles, who suddenly appeared behind him. Boban is sure that it was only by a miracle that Gil was able to avoid his attack, and that he will not be so lucky again. But the next time, the guy manages to react in time. The sounds of swords cutting through the air fill the space around the opponents. Jill deflects another blow, and the sword falls to the ground with a loud thud. Sally is surprised and shocked. The other robbers look the same way, with silent surprise in their eyes. Boban doesn't understand how the guy managed to dodge the blow, because he was aiming straight at his heart. What the hell is going on here? He wonders. Gil exhales tiredly. He was very close to death now. A new sign notifies that the guy has received a bonus to agility and unlocked a new ability, Lightning Strike. His passive skill is that when faced with mortal danger, he gains abilities based on his dexterity level. When using the Lightning Strike ability, he will be able to dodge any physical attack for 2 seconds. However, the ability does not apply to magical attacks. But nevertheless, during the next attack, his power is concentrated in one place to deliver a fatal blow. Jill understands that if it weren't for this ability, he would have already gone to the next world. At first, he thinks that one double has already been defeated, and now only the second one remains to be dealt with. But from the Shadow Swordsman's laughter, he quickly realizes that this is not the case at all. Boban is sure that the guy was just lucky to avoid an attack again. However, it was just a double, and the fun was just beginning. With these words, he calls the sword back to himself. To pity one's enemy means to harm oneself, he realizes. He and his doubles underestimated this guy, but it's time to fix that. The games are over, says the bandit leader. Now each of the shadows has 2 swords in their hands. Gil remains unarmed, but this does not diminish his confidence. He clenches his fists tensely and waits for the next attack. This fight will be decisive. The Shadow Swordsman's grip on the hilt of his sword tightened as he prepared to deliver a crushing blow, reveling in his superiority. Along with his doubles, he uses his signature fighting technique called the Desolation Strike. Gil, watching the approaching whirlwind, felt cold sweat break out on his forehead and his heart begin to beat at a furious speed. The boy strains all his senses to recognize the enemy's movements in time, trying to catch the smallest details in this whirlwind of shadows and steel. Jill tries to discern the slightest movement of the shadows in order to anticipate the direction of the blow and dodge it. He seems to intuitively understand where exactly the next blow will be dealt, and prepares his body to perform a maneuver that could save him from certain death. However, the boy's strength is already running out. The shadow attacks are too fast and precise, and in the end, Gil fails to dodge one of them. The boy felt a searing pain, as if his body had been pierced by a red-hot iron, and blood gushed from the wound on his shoulder, staining his clothes scarlet. "You did a great job, Banks," comes the praise through the swirl of shadows. Gil sees another sign, notifying him of a significant percentage of his health points being lost, and now he needs timely treatment. Boban doesn't give him any time to catch his breath, attacking the guy with another blow. Despite all his efforts, Gil, whose strength was rapidly fading, was unable to maintain his concentration. A fleeting flicker of the shadow deceived him, and he was unable to react. "The god of death has come for you," Boban laughs. Gil pushed off the ground sharply, his eyes burning with determination and hatred for his opponent. The guy had no intention of giving up. The Shadow Swordsman continued to strike, confident of his impending victory. "I'll find you a great spot in the cemetery, Jill," Boban grins. However, his bravado is interrupted by something unusual. The Shadow Swordsman tenses, his gaze scanning the battlefield with intensity. At first, he only manages to catch a glimpse of strands of gray hair. There was a deafening explosion that, like thunder, pierced the silence, filling the air with a roar and ringing. It seemed that everything around shook. Sally froze in place, not believing her eyes. The Shadow Swordsman's companions were also dumbfounded, their mouths wide open in surprise. The tension reached its peak, and Boban looked around tensely, his eyes wide. Gil is alert and focused in his quest to deliver the final, desperate blow. But just as Gil was about to deliver his killing blow, the tall and powerful figure of Grandfather Ube appeared between him and the stunned Shadow Swordsman, as if from nowhere, intercepting the boy's blow and stopping the fight. "Put your hand down," the man commands. There was no plea or request in his tone, but only a firm and unyielding command that did not tolerate objections. And at that very moment, as if in response to his words, peals of thunder were heard, filling the entire space. Even though his body was wounded and his strength was waning, Gil refused to give up. Despite the fact that his body was at the limit of its capabilities, the wounds burned with unbearable pain. His face was covered in sweat and blood, and his movements became slow and awkward. The boy's eyes expressed an irreconcilable desire to fight against all odds. Oob said calmly, his voice deep and even, soft against the looming tension. Sally, meanwhile, was panicking and examining the boy's injuries to see how badly he was hurt. "Everything is fine," Gil reassured her. Grandfather Ube confidently walked away from the battlefield, drawing the boy's attention to the fact that the storm would soon intensify. Their departure was interrupted by Boban's slightly nervous chuckle from behind them. "How funny!" the Shadow Swordsman laughs. "Uba, do you really think you can just come and take them away?" Boban asks, his voice devoid of the former amusement. At that very moment, Grandfather Ube stops his measured pace. "Boban, if I hadn't stopped Gil's blow, I'm afraid you would already be dead," Ube says calmly, without even turning around. These words strike the swordsman to the very depths of his soul. "What did you say?" he cries out indignantly. "Nonsense! That some priest could kill me? If you hadn't stopped us, I would have killed him long ago." The Shadow Swordsman screams in impotent rage. A new sign states that the Shadow Madness quest has been completed. This meant that the system also considered that the Shadow Swordsman had been defeated. Grandpa Uba takes Gil and Sally home, ignoring the silent Boban. The Shadow Swordsman's subordinates are trying to persuade the boss to leave this place too, because if there is a strong thunderstorm, then they will all be in trouble. However, Boban doesn't want to hear anything. He believes that the fight is not over yet and demands that Gil return back. Fortunately, his comrades prevent Boban from doing anything stupid and do their best to keep him from continuing the fight. Jill looks back briefly, watching the unfolding action thoughtfully. Sally impatiently urges the guy to go further, and he obediently follows her. Luckily, they manage to get home before the weather gets completely bad. Sally carefully heats all the wounds on Gil's body, trying to ignore his painful hissing. If he kept twirling like that, she wouldn't be able to properly apply the medicine to his injuries. Sorry, I caused you and Grandpa problems again, Gil says guiltily. But Sally isn't mad at him. She never thought this guy would be so strong. Gil is upset that this time, the experience he gained was not enough to increase his level, and he still needs to heal his wounds. The guy decides to put his sad thoughts aside for a while and asks Sally how it happened that they knew Bo. Let's have a bath? The girl replies that she grew up with the Shadow Swordsman, and for a long time they were just like brother and sister. Quite quickly, Sally finishes with the guy's wounds and steps away with a slightly embarrassed smile on her face. Jill is very grateful to her for her help. Sally believes that she should thank the guy, and not he, her. Gil looks at the girl carefully, a slight smile on his lips. She's leaving very soon, because she still needs to help Grandpa Uba today, and the weather outside is getting worse and worse. Gil couldn't help but think that the rain was just as heavy on the day he arrived here. I wonder how Mom is, the boy thinks. He's sure his mom is worried because she can't find him anywhere. Gil hopes he can return home soon, as he received the Latona card today for completing this task. Now all that's left is to find the temple using this map and defeat the local boss there. Then there will definitely be an opportunity to leave this strange place. Jill decides to go there as soon as the rain stops. You have received a mysterious key, the new sign says. I wonder what it's for, Jill asks, surprised. He takes out the key in hopes of getting more information. During battle, there is a chance that a mysterious treasure chest of a certain color will drop, such as white, green, purple, red, orange, and black. Opening a chest with this key may drop gems, weapons, or equipment that cannot be purchased from the store. Jill reaches out to grab the nearest piece of clothing. He will get out of here very soon. The door opens with a quiet creak, letting another person into the room. Jill realizes that Ube's grandfather has returned. He wanted to come and visit the guy earlier, but it was raining too hard outside, and the man barely managed to cover the seedlings. How are your wounds? Ube asks. Jill replies that there is nothing to worry about. They are just scratches, and they will soon go away. Ube admits that he didn't expect Gil to be able to win the battle with Bo, Bainham, because he is one of the strongest swordsmen in the city. Gil is sure that if the Shadow Swordsman had not been accustomed to underestimating his opponents, he would not have had a chance to win this fight. Ubi believes that in battle, it is not only physical strength that is important, but also willpower and the ability to analyze the situation. This means that Gil did not defeat Boban by accident. The guy decides to ask why this swordsman became so evil if he and Sally grew up together and were even like brother and sister. Ubi lights a cigarette tensely and exhales smoke, thinking before answering, and begins his story. It happened 10 years ago. On that day, it was raining just as heavily, and then Ube and Sally had just arrived in this city. They approached a house and wanted to ask for shelter for the night, when suddenly they saw a terrible monster attacking defenseless people. But it was too late, and the owners of the house were dead. Luckily, their child was not harmed. Ubi and Sally appeared at the moment when a terrible monster was already rushing towards the child, who was crying bitterly over the body of his mother. His mouth was wide open in a sinister grin, and drops of thick scarlet blood flowed from the tips of his sharp claws. If they had been even a couple of seconds late, the boy would have been beyond saving. But Ube was lucky to make it in time. The man used his heavenly thunder ability to defeat the monster and save the boy. Having received a powerful blow to the shoulder, the monster immediately realized that he was facing an opponent who was superior in strength. He growled in frustration, clenching his teeth until they creaked. The monster quickly turned around and rushed away with incredible speed towards the dense forest, its dark figure disappearing between the trees like a shadow, dissolving into the darkness. Ube's gaze moved to the boy, who was still shaking from the horror he had experienced, and the man realized that his main task now was to calm and protect the child. This child was Bo-Bon. Later, Ube helped the boy bury his parents and took him in. Now Gil understood a lot, but why then does this swordsman treat Ube and Sally so badly? The thing is that Bo-Ban decided that his duty was to find the monster that killed his parents, and the search for the monster became the goal of his whole life. Ube constantly told him to abandon this idea and live a normal life, because the desert of Latona is home to many dangerous monsters, and it is difficult to even imagine how terrible they are. Even if Ube had used all his power, he probably wouldn't have been able to kill that monster, let alone Bo-Bon, so in the end, he still left. Gil wondered how terrible that creature must be if even the strongest grandfather Ube feared it. Even though Gil has already received the map, he still needs to go through the desert and find the temple, and with his current power level, he could be killed before he even finds the temple. Last time, Gil got a boost to all of his stats, but that monster still dealt with him easily, which means the guy definitely needs to get even stronger. So he stops Ube before he can walk out the door. "Please teach me to fight," the boy cries out passionately. "I must become stronger, find the temple, and get out of here." Ube answers after a short pause. Jill furiously shouts back that she knows how to get out of this desert, but it's all in vain. He sadly realizes that he was wrong to give in to his emotions, because the paths of Bo-Bon and grandfather Ube diverged in different directions for this very reason. His sad thoughts are interrupted by a quiet voice. "Tomorrow, the storm will go behind the mountain," says Ube. "If you can pass my test, then I will train you." "Don't worry, I can handle it, Grandpa Ube," Jill shouts joyfully after the man as he leaves. Ube thinks that for the first time in a long time today, he felt hope. Because in that battle, Gil showed that he has impressive strength, and even his signature Thunder Shield could not withstand and cracked. And this is his most powerful technique. Perhaps this unusual young man will really be able to lead all the imprisoned people out of this place. Another game window with information appears next to Gil. Now he faces a daily challenge that consists of running and weighted push-ups, as well as sit-ups. This training is just hellish, but he needs to increase his stats, so he can't refuse. And Jill accepts this task with determination. The very next morning, the guy begins to perform the necessary exercises. This training was exhausting his body and testing his willpower, but Gil understood that he needed to increase his stats, make himself stronger and more resilient no matter what, so he simply couldn't refuse it. This gaming system turned out to be quite useful. It even provided the guy with the necessary equipment for training. And Gil, as if possessed, tirelessly repeated all the exercises, throwing away pain and fatigue like unnecessary trash, He was ready to give all his strength to achieve his goal. His body screamed with fatigue, but his spirit remained unbending. It had been a long time since he had such a strong desire to fight for one goal. For completing the tasks, he receives 4 skill points and falls exhausted onto the soft grass. Now he needs to decide what upgrades he will spend the points he earned on. Considering that he can heal himself and his defensive skills are pretty good, 2 points need to be spent on intelligence and another 2 on endurance. The guy is distracted by a quiet call. He turns around and sees Sally running quickly towards him. The girl says that she wanted to bring Gil breakfast, but she didn't find him at home, and her grandfather told her that he might be in this place. Gil gratefully accepts the girl's breakfast, explaining that Ube's grandfather agreed to teach him, so now he comes here early to prepare for training. Sally is surprised and delighted that her grandfather will be training this boy. She can't wait to see what abilities Gil will awaken to. I'm a priest, so what other powers are available to me? Jill wonders, carefully chewing a delicious bun. Sally explains to the boy that the priest is just his class, that is, the occupation that the gods chose for him, and elemental abilities are not given out of nowhere, but manifest themselves depending on a person's own skills. The class only provides a direction for development, and the abilities themselves are directly related to personal combat skills, and each person has their own abilities. For example, Sally uses the power of fire, Grandpa Oob has the power of thunder, and Boban has manifested the power of shadows. Now Gil is becoming incredibly curious about what abilities will awaken in him. Sally was born and lived on the continent of Pelazis, one of the 5 continents of her homeworld, which differs from the other continents in that it has a large concentration of craft workshops, allowing for thriving trade and a constant gathering of people from all corners of the world. To the west of Pelazis lies Mogara, home to the dragon riders, often covered in smoke and ash from the volcanic eruptions that dot the mainland. In the north lies Xanthid, a true kingdom of eternal winter, home to giants and bloodthirsty beasts who guard the deposits of valuable minerals that this continent is rich in. To the east lies Bergama, a continent covered in dense forests that harbor huge, ferocious monsters, alongside which live elves who wield powerful, ancient magic. To the south lies Cubitek, or the Land's End, as everyone calls it, where live the dwarves, whose wares from their forge hammers are highly prized throughout the world. Legend has it that Kubitek is washed by an endless sea, and if you cross it, you can reach the abode of the gods and gain unlimited power. Previously, Sally thought that the story about the endless sea and the abode of the gods was just a legend. But when she got here, she realized that all of this was actually true. Gil is confident that finding the temple and leaving the Latona Desert is indeed possible, and they will definitely be able to get out of here. This gives the girl hope, and she nods at him with a smile. "I didn't think you'd wake up before me," Grandpa Oob's voice suddenly rings out. "Sally, are you done declaring your feelings yet?" The man smiles. He reacts to all of Sally's indignation with a calm and detached expression on his face. "Gil, are you ready to take the test?" Ube asks. Without a second's hesitation, Jill, with inspiration and enthusiasm, answers positively. At the very beginning, when chaos reigned everywhere, the gods populated this world with various peoples and gave each creature its own purpose, showed them the way, and divided them into classes. The only thing that unites this world is that everything here consists of elements. Moreover, there are not only tangible elements, such as water, fire, lightning, earth, or wood, but also intangible ones, such as light that illuminates the world, or shadow that creates contrast. And all these elements, both visible and invisible, play an important role in the surrounding world. To master the power of the elements, one must first learn to feel them. To do this, you need to try to feel the spontaneous flow. It is necessary to learn to feel the very essence of these elements. You need to immerse yourself in the study of the elements. Learn to sense their essence, their internal vibrations, and only then will you be able to use their power to achieve your goals. At these words, Grandfather Ube falls to the ground, and a bright blue glow of an opening portal appears around him. Jill watches, fascinated, what is happening before his eyes. This portal allows you to travel directly to the lair of the monsters. Ube accidentally found this place during his next hunt. And his sword, named Etsil, has served the man faithfully for several decades, because he has fed him enough blood in many of his battles. In 3 days, Ube will open the portal again, during which time Gil must kill the king of the monsters with this sword and bring his head. Then the test will be passed. Remember, only by awakening your elemental abilities can you use the true power of this sword and kill the king of monsters, Ube solemnly instructs him. But if Gil goes there, he may never return, and Grandfather Ube gives him one last chance to change his mind. The guy just grins confidently. "I won't change my mind," he says, reaching for the sword. He will surely return with victory and the severed head of the king of the monsters. Please confirm activation of the quest, Awakening the King of Monsters. A new system message reads. "I confirm," Jill says confidently. The task has been accepted, and there are 72 hours to complete it. Oob can only watch the boy disappear into the portal. These monsters have well-developed defensive abilities, and without the power of the elements, it is simply impossible to kill their king. This power will only manifest in Gil if he is in mortal danger, Ube thinks. Meanwhile, the guy is already in the right location. This place is completely different from the one he found himself in initially. Everything looks strange, and for some reason, the sand under his feet is black, and the sun is not visible at all, no matter how carefully he looks up. The smell coming from this place also does not evoke positive emotions at all. Gil realizes he needs to come up with a plan and find these monsters. At his current level, it will be extremely difficult to defeat the boss, so he needs to kill a few mobs first to raise his level. It's time to start searching, he thinks. But the local monsters find Gil first. The guy barely manages to dodge the first unexpected attack. He is too shocked by the suddenness of the attack. How did they even notice him so quickly? The question echoed in Gil's mind, but now was not the time to look for an answer. His focus had to be on survival. The guy concentrates, gathering his strength and preparing for the first fight. A previously unknown monster appears in his field of vision and spreads its powerful wings. The wingspan of this monster was so great that it seemed as if it covered the entire sky, and the shadow of its enormous figure plunged everything around into an ominous semi-darkness. His only semblance of an eye, in the middle of his muzzle, framed by spikes, burned with rage and hatred. It was Dotham, the most mysterious level 20 monster in the Latona Desert. Gil is confident that he can kill monsters with this sword even without elemental abilities, and he himself decides how he will use this weapon. It's time to try this sword in action. Throughout the time, from the moment he came to this world, Gil tirelessly fought and struggled for his life, gaining invaluable combat experience, which, like tempered steel, made him stronger and more resilient. This means that now he is far from being the newbie he was before. He is turned into a real warrior, capable of fighting back against anyone. And no matter what enemy he faces, there is no longer any room for fear in his heart. Its place has now been taken by the passion for battle. He will definitely kill this monster and will be able to increase his level. Gil will constantly become stronger and stronger. He pushes off the ground, preparing to strike. With incredible speed, Gil rushed forward, his sword flashing through the air like lightning. He rushed into the sky, and in flight, he severed several of the monster's nearest tentacles, leaving them writhing helplessly on the muddy ground. This feeling of victory is intoxicating, and the guy feels himself becoming even stronger. Gritting his teeth with tension and gathering all his rage, Gil, whose muscles were strained to the limit, grabbed the hilt of the sword even tighter, as if trying to merge with it, and with all his strength brought it down, dealing a crushing blow. With a nasty, squelching sound, the tip of the sword, like a knife through butter, entered the monster's body, tearing through its flesh. Gripping the hilt with both hands, Gil spins the sword clockwise with effort. One more move, and the guy cuts the monster into 2 even parts, and with a disgusting sound, they fall to the ground. Gil, breathing heavily, staggered back from the body of the severed monster, his sword, still stained with dark blood, trembling in his hands, and he looked with disgust at the results of his duel. It was difficult, but now he had reached level 17 and received 3,500 experience points and 5 points available for distribution. The joy of victory fades a little when suddenly a whole crowd of exactly the same monsters appears around the guy, full of strength and a thirst for revenge for their brother. At this time, Bo-Ban is also busy with something important. Not enough. Too weak. His dissatisfied swearing can be heard. The man, naked to the waist, trains diligently, but it does not bring him the necessary satisfaction. His eyes glow with fury and strength, and his blows are lightning fast and accurate. No amount of effort helps him understand what happened recently in that battle. How could he lose to this Gil? Some pathetic priest, without even the most basic abilities, was ready to deal such a powerful blow that even he, the strongest shadow swordsman, became afraid. Boban doesn't remember Ube ever using the technique he used to end the fight between them. And even this strongest man had a hard time stopping that guy's punch. Boban doesn't understand, but really wants to know. Who is this Gil? AD lived at this time, unaware of Boban's thoughts, and continued to tirelessly fight a crowd of unusual monsters. Dotham is down. Level up. The only sound heard from all sides is the system's mechanical voice. The guy's sword cuts through the air like a whirlwind, leaving a trail of blood behind it. Jill fights with all her might, never resting. With each monster he defeated, his level rose higher and higher, and he felt his body becoming stronger, his reactions sharper, and his skills more and more perfect. Every swing he made was full of power and determination. Now he has reached level 25. 45 points are available for distribution, and the opportunity to unlock access to medicines has appeared. It will take 15 levels to unlock the cure. Gil has been working so hard to level up, and he's being asked to pay so much to gain access to the drugs, so it's quite a difficult choice. Since levels are used to purchase goods, it's logical that the higher the level, the more difficult it will be to raise it, and if he wants to unlock something later, he will have to spend even more. Gil decides to calculate how many levels he will need to unlock everything, including the mercenary system. Putting it all together, he realizes that he will need to spend as many as 300 levels. In this case, Gil decides to accumulate enough levels to unlock the most expensive sections. But right now, he needs to kill the king of the monsters. So first, he will spend levels on medicine to ensure survival. Once he makes his decision, he learns that restorative, strengthening, skill-enhancing, cooling, and accelerating medicines are available to him. As he thought, the effectiveness of the medicine depends on the amount of his strength and health points. That is, the higher his combat ability, the stronger the restorative properties of the medicine. This means that if he has, for example, 10,000 health points, then within 10 seconds, he will be able to restore as many as 8,000 points. And this is absolutely the same as completely restoring his health. Gil decisively removes the drug block. He acquires a medicine called Berserker's Sorrow for 8 levels. Now Gil literally has 2 whole lives. The silence is broken by the loud rumble of his stomach. The guy spent too much energy killing those monsters, so now it's time to buy something to eat at the marketplace and restore his spent strength. He buys a basket with several loaves of white bread, which are good for reducing hunger. They are quite hard and do not compare at all to Sally's tender buns. 12 hours have passed before you know it, leaving only 60 hours to complete this task. Grandfather Ube said that the monster's lair is in the northwest, and you just need to follow the map. The system reminds the guy with another notification about the need to distribute points. Gil had forgotten all about them. Last time, he pumped up his strength and agility quite well, but it would be good to also strengthen his armor and increase the amount of mana, because if he gets any ability that uses mana, then the lack of it can significantly limit the damage. Additionally, another problem is that if he is left with too little health during the battle, the fight will be much more difficult, and a monster that is too strong will be able to kill him in one hit, without even giving him a chance to use medicine. It's like taking university entrance exams, where you need to be good at math, chemistry, and a foreign language to get high scores. But the only difference is that you only have to take the exams once, while in this game, he can constantly gain new abilities. You just need to constantly improve various characteristics so you can achieve the maximum effect. The guy decides to spend points on armor, strength, defensive abilities, dexterity, and magic. Now all that remains is to find the monster's lair, and he is confident that this test will be passed successfully. At this time, Sally learns that Ube's grandfather let Gil go alone to such a dangerous place. Will he be okay? The girl worries. However, Grandpa Ube is absolutely calm, and he has a reason for it. He left a magical mark on the sword, and if Gil was in mortal danger, he would come to the boy's aid. Sally doesn't understand why it was necessary to send Gil to the monster's lair at all. And why did grandfather never tell her that he himself had already been there? Ubi replies that he simply found this place by chance during his next hunt. He asks Sally to prepare something to eat for his return from the city. The girl realizes that the man is avoiding the conversation again. In fact, Ube understands that no words will stop Gil from trying to get out of here. Maybe if the guy sees these monsters with his own eyes and faces the cruel reality of this world, he will finally abandon this initially failed idea. He knows that he has given Gil an impossible task, but deep down, he still hopes that he will be able to win and bring him the head of the king of the monsters. Then people will believe that he is the one who is able to lead them all out of here, the real God. Jill has been scouring the area for 3 hours now, searching for the monster's lair. It must be very close already. The guy is sure. "Help!" he suddenly hears. A frightened girl in tattered clothes runs towards him with a desperate cry, clutching a child to her chest. How did they get here? Jill wonders, rushing towards them without thinking. What happened? He asks. The girl is too scared to clearly explain what is happening and only manages to say something about monsters. But Jill himself already sees and hears the approach of the monsters and the ringing of their weapons. Hot steam, like from a locomotive, was escaping from the nostrils of the huge red monsters, and this air mixed with their angry growls. There were 2 of them, these huge scarlet giants whose eyes burned with rage, and another monster, slightly smaller than them. These are the beast-like monsters of Latona, possessing incredible destructive power and a huge amount of health. Next to them is the level 40 desert orc, Reheidler, who can subjugate Latona's low-intelligence creatures and summon and control large desert monsters, directing their attacks. This orc's level is much higher than all the monsters Gil has fought before, and he also has these 2 monsters with the same intelligence as those bandits. The good news is that since he met these monsters here, their lair is already very close. Did this woman and child really get here via teleportation, like me? Jill wonders. The woman hides behind his back, trembling with fear and horror, hugging her small child with all her strength, who, in turn, was quietly crying, clinging to his mother. Gil's eyes reflected the determination to protect not only himself, but them as well. He leans over to the girl and the child, reassuring them and telling them that they are safe now. "Stupid, ignorant, and cowardly worms," the orc growls angrily, drawing ever closer to the humans. "The one I killed before you called me the same," Jill grins. "Get ready for a good snack," the orc says mockingly to his monsters. Gil gets into a fighting stance, ready to repel any attack. Tear these puny worms into tiny pieces, and let the bloody feast begin. The orc roars at the top of his lungs. Gil with guttural roars, their claws and fangs cutting through the air like razor blades. They were thirsty for blood, and their attacks were ferocious and merciless. Gil dodged their blows like a whirlwind, his sword cutting through the air with lightning speed. Without thinking, he dealt the monster precise, brutal blows, leaving a trail of blood behind him. The monster screamed furiously, unable to dodge the crushing blows. Enraged and clumsy, he lost his guard for a moment, and Gil, with lightning speed, took advantage of his mistake, inflicting another wound with a precise blow. Gil successfully repelled all the attacks of the red monster, and with each blow, his determination only strengthened. His eyes burned with rage, and he was ready to destroy all his enemies. The monster, letting out a wild roar of pain, tried to grab Gil with its paws, but he, like a shadow, dodged its paws. Like two wild animals, they rolled on the ground, their bodies covered in dust and blood. The monster's claws tore at Gil's clothes and flesh, and the boy's sword whistled through the air, trying to find the monster's weak spot. The girl and her child watched the battle progress from a safe place in fear. Gil, feeling his superiority, gathered all his energy and will, and delivered another crushing blow with his sword. After leveling up, he became much stronger. The disgruntled orc could only watch as the boy pierced the red monster's chest, and it fell to the ground with a wheezing sound, its eyes going dark. "What are you standing there for? Finish him off quickly," he shouted at the second beast-like monster. But these plans were not destined to come true. The second monster swallowed hard and looked at the body of his dead comrade. And instead of joining the fight, as the orc expected, he turned around in fear and, with his tail between his legs, like a cowardly dog, he began to run at great speed. The desert orc is furious, but he is nevertheless confident that he can handle this guy without this useless, escaped trash. The orc's furious cry is interrupted by the tip of a sword suddenly appearing right at his throat. "Drop the club and don't move unless you want to lose your head," Gil tells him with a casual smile. He stands confidently on his feet. His posture is relaxed and collected at the same time, and his body is ready for any development of events. "Why are you following these two?" Jill asks. The orc indignantly replies that he is a faithful servant of the god of these lands, and if the guy dares to kill him, then divine punishment will overtake him instantly. Gil is not at all fazed by this, and hits the orc in the face with the hilt of his sword, intending to make him more compliant. "How painful!" the desert orc hisses. Gil warns that next time, it won't be the hilt, but the blade, if he doesn't show him where their lair is right now. The defeated orc points the guy in the direction. It seems he is not lying, and this place really does look like the one marked on the map. While Jill is trying to get a good look at the mountains in the distance, the orc takes advantage of the opportunity to attack the girl and child. The guy doesn't have time to react before the orc is already next to the defenseless people. The monster laughs evilly, promising to immediately wring those thin necks and drink all their blood. "Now I will show you my true power," the monster screams. But the guy doesn't intend to wait for that moment. He confidently rushes at the monster, getting ready to attack, but an unknown guy gets ahead of him. The stunned orc, taken by surprise, begins to turn his head from side to side in complete bewilderment, trying to understand where the attack is coming from. But he doesn't have time to react. The monster is completely confused by the sudden appearance of a new enemy and takes a kick straight to the face. The monster, stunned and disoriented by the powerful blow, flies back, unable to maintain its balance. Now, these defenseless people are safe, and Jill is shocked by what is happening. "You're not bad," the stranger tells him. Several more people appear behind him, and Jill tries to find out who they are and what they are doing here. The stranger says that 3 days ago, he and his friends suddenly found themselves here and were immediately attacked by orcs who took their comrade during the battle. So they followed the monster's trail to save their friend. By the way, my name is Bros, and I'm a warrior, says the guy to Gilu, extending his hand to introduce himself. Next to him is an assassin named Pheloija. A little further away stands Rachel, and she is a healer. Jill also tells the boys her name and shakes their outstretched hand. Jill, do you by any chance know why we suddenly moved here? Bros asks. Jill says, upset, that she knows nothing about it. But this orc must surely know something. Sooner or later, I will kill you all, the monster thinks at this time. He doesn't expect to be thrown to the ground in a humiliating manner, with a tight circle forming around him, preventing him from escaping. The monster is furious, because how can these pathetic insects, who are only fit to become their dinner, treat God and his servant so disrespectfully? Hey, Rehidler, calls the surprised orc Jill. He has several questions for this monster. And if this orc doesn't want to die, he'll have to answer. Poor Rehidler has to tell these people everything he knows. He convinces Gil that he does not have such a high status in the tribe and does not know everything. All he knows is that God sends people to these lands to become food for all the monsters living here. Rehidler simply follows the will of his God and guards these territories. Rehidler's story with disgust, their faces distorted with anger and horror. At this time, somewhere in the city of Dirks, it is cloudy and raining again. Uba, are you out of your mind? One of the 4 unknown figures sitting on makeshift thrones says to the man. Let's say he finds this temple. What next? We still can't defeat his guards, says a fire mage named Hicks, who has the power of the wind. He is outraged that Ube is placing his hopes on a boy who doesn't even have elemental abilities yet. Besides, everyone knows what happens if you incur the wrath of God. All the inhabitants of the city are in danger, so Ube should go to the lair of the monsters, kill this boy himself, and repent before God, begging for forgiveness. Ube replies that one cannot simply give up the lives of unsuspecting comrades in exchange for what they all call peace. The man believes that Hicks is excellent at passing off his shortcomings as strengths and proudly moving forward without looking back at the cemetery he left behind. What did you say? Hicks screams in rage. He concentrates his power in his palm, preparing to respond to the insult. He intends to punish Ube himself instead of their god. In response to all the shouts, the man simply silently erects a thunder shield around himself. His eyes are full of confidence and calm. The man stands relaxed in front of the enraged mage, confident in the strength of his shield. Hicks pauses, uncertain. He can only watch, helplessly. Ube leaves, saying that he is not satisfied with a world built on the bones of others. He will take up arms again and continue to look for a way to get out of here and protect all these innocent people, standing up to the one they call God here. Don't underestimate me, Hicks shouts furiously again. However, his comrade stops him with one lazy movement of his hand. Hicks pauses, uncertain. He is angry, but now he cannot afford to take revenge for the humiliation. At this time, Jill reflects on the fact that all these people were sent to feed the local monsters. On the one hand, it's just part of the game, But on the other hand, he met Grandpa Oob, Sally, and these guys here, and now he understands that he no longer perceives this place as a game. They are all living people to him, who cannot be sacrificed just for fun, and he is obliged to find the Temple of Khepri and get everyone out of here. Once in the library, Gil read a book on Egyptian mythology and learned that Khepri is one of the hypostases of the god Ra, the most powerful of the great Egyptian Ennead. So why was such a powerful god locked up here? If the Temple of Khepri is on the other side, then what is this orc guarding? Bross's voice breaks him out of his thoughts. The boys are ready to go into the monster's lair. Jill thinks that there is no telling what other monsters they will encounter in the future. Anyone can be encountered on the way to this lair. And here, it is still relatively safe. Although Rachel is a healer, she can also create a magical barrier and enhance elemental abilities. Therefore, Bross suggests that the girl stay here and take care of the mother and child. The girl agrees that she can protect them and obediently remains to wait for the return of the rest of the boys. The decision is unanimously made to go to the monster's lair right now. An indignant Rehidler advises them not to go into the lair, as they will simply be eaten by stronger orcs there. Afraid you'll get eaten along with us? Jill grins. I'm Rehidler, not some coward, the orc shouts back indignantly. Bross pulls on the rope that binds the monster's hands, hurrying it along. Then let's go. No point in wasting time talking, he says cheerfully to the orc. Help! Desperate cries are heard from the depths of one of the caves. It is completely filled with monsters of different levels, sizes, and types. Several of them easily carry on their shoulders a cage with another portion of new people destined for food. That's all they managed to catch today, and they are awaiting further instructions from their leader. His gaze was full of disdain. This monster saw nothing in people except future dinner. A shock to all the monsters was the appearance of another powerful force, which shattered the cage into small pieces of metal. The surprised faces of the monsters were covered with a crust of ice. Caught off guard by the icy blast, the nearby monsters instantly froze, as if they had turned into ice statues, their bodies encased in a transparent but thick crust of ice, and their eyes, full of horror and bewilderment, frozen. Don't be afraid. I am the great magician Nagome, and I will get you out of here, cried one of the rescuers who had made it into the cave. If there are other heroes among you, let's unite and kill these monsters, he says to the captives with hope in his voice. It is unforgivable that so many people have already died because of these bloodthirsty monsters. Ngom shouts with confidence in his voice. He uses his ice storm blades to attack the king of the monsters. However, an unpleasant discovery occurs to him, and his confidence cracks, and his face darkens with anxiety. The blades don't even reach the monster's face, hitting an invisible shield and falling powerlessly to the ground next to it. Ngom did not expect this result of his attack at all. The guy didn't even have time to breathe before the power of the king of monsters slowly but inexorably lifted him into the air like a puppet. He doesn't have time to do absolutely anything. None of his comrades understand what is happening. Ngom could neither defend himself nor run away. He was defenseless against this power. His body dangled helplessly in the air, and he understood that it was all over. The king of the monsters grinned sinisterly, his eyes glowing with rage and satisfaction. His strength began to grow, and Nagom's body, as if being squeezed in a vice, trembled, foreseeing a terrible fate. A few seconds later, the boy's body exploded like a bomb, and his remains fell to the ground like bloody rain. Shreds and hot blood flew in all directions and splashed his comrades, leaving disgusting stains on their bodies and faces. This was done by the king of monsters, the orc chieftain Fenrir, level 85, and it is almost impossible to defeat him. Meanwhile, Gil and his new friends are getting closer and closer to the monster's lair. They encounter a large number of monsters, but they successfully clear their path. Gil's sword, like lightning come to life, flashes tirelessly through the air, delivering precise and accurate blows, and his every movement is filled with grace and deadly force. The monsters, in impotent rage, try to overcome the guy, unleashing all their strength and ferocity on him, but they fail. Jill, not giving the monsters time to come to their senses, strikes with lightning speed. The surprised orc cautiously watches the progress of the battle from the side. These people are much more powerful than he previously thought. And this guy, Gil, seems to have become even stronger since their first meeting. Rahidler wonders, perplexed. The closer the boys get to the monster's lair, the more of them appear around, and the stronger they become. Even though Gil has used up all of his levels, his experience continues to accumulate according to the level he had before. These monsters are quite strong, but the guy still feels like the experience bar is filling up too slowly, and he needs to speed up somehow. Bras has his own understanding of his hesitation. These monsters are slow, but they are not easy to kill, and this is the first time Bras has seen a person who can deal with monsters so easily, even without using elemental abilities. The guy is sure that he and Gil did not meet by chance. He likes this man, so he invites him to join his squad when they get out of here. "To your squad?" Jill asks, surprised. Bras laughs that his squad is full of mature beauties with gorgeous figures, and he is ready to introduce Gil to them absolutely free of charge. Phalogia smirked behind him. Bras blushes awkwardly, looking away, and says that it's time for them to move on. "There must be an entrance to the monster's lair over there," says Phalogia. Everyone looks attentively at the designated place, and their eyes, full of determination and anxiety, try to discern what awaits them ahead. In front of them, an entrance to a cave opens, from which a faint, bluish glow emanates. "Hey, Rahidler, is this here?" asks Jill. However, the guy still doesn't receive an answer. Apparently, the desert orc managed to escape while they were discussing joining the squad. Inspired by freedom, Rodler is already halfway to his owner at this time. He must quickly report to the chief that people have invaded these territories. Perhaps he will even be rewarded for the timely warning. Meanwhile, Gil and his new friends are already entering the discovered cave. It smells of orcs here, so apparently Rahidler didn't deceive them after all, and really did lead them to the right place. Bras commands decisively. Several small torches burn along the walls of the cave, lighting their way. This place is somehow strange, because the guys have been walking for quite a long time, but still haven't met a single monster. And these are not their only difficulties. The guys are faced with a new, difficult choice. They see several absolutely identical tunnels leading in different directions. Looks like they'll have to split up. Bros places a mark of the fire gate on the palm of each of them. If one of the guys finds any clue or gets into trouble, he must read the spell, and the others will immediately teleport to him. They decide that Bros will go left, Feloja will go right, and Gil will have no choice but to go straight ahead. Bros reminds the boys once again that in case of danger, they need to immediately cast the spell. At this point, they end all discussions and separate. Jill confidently moves forward, gradually breaking into a light jog. He needs to somehow increase his level. But how, if there are no monsters nearby? However, around the next turn, the guy unexpectedly finds what he wants. A terrible picture appears before his eyes. He sees the mutilated body of a girl being tormented by monsters, and he is overcome with a feeling of powerlessness and rage. The monsters seem to pay no attention to him, continuing their gruesome feast. They were completely absorbed in their meal, as if not noticing his presence. Taganj ghouls of the 47th level. They are capable of tearing a person apart with a single bite. They are afraid of light and rarely appear alone, preferring to live in packs. All he had to do was think about it, and combat experience itself came into the guy's hands. The situation is complicated only by the fact that with every second there are more and more of these monsters. Their terrible cries, full of hatred and hunger, echo around like harbingers of imminent death. Rakidler had already successfully reached his owner. 3 pathetic worms have infiltrated our territory, but now they've split up and trapped themselves. The orc tells his tale. He is sure that the local evil spirits have already torn the strangers to pieces. Rahidler has no idea that this is not true at all. These ghouls aren't too strong for Gil, but there are a lot of them, and they give a lot of experience. With unprecedented enthusiasm, the guy continues to chop the monsters into small pieces. For 10 killed ghouls, he receives 20,000 combat experience points. However, killing them one by one is extremely ineffective. Gil's school of experience is rapidly filling up, and he hopes to be able to level up very soon. He doesn't have much time, so he needs to finish here quickly. With over 99 ghouls slain, Jill finally reaches level 14, increasing all of her stats. He now has access to a new skill called Divine Punishment, which deals 500 points of damage to all enemies within a 3-meter radius. He also has access to the Divine Strike skill, which instantly deals damage to 20 enemies within a 5-meter radius, increasing the attack's power by 60% and restoring health by 5% of the damage dealt. And the third available skill is called Divine Path, which removes all imposed negative effects and increases the player's speed by 20%. Jill can only choose 2 skills out of these 3, and the choice is quite difficult. Divine Path and Divine Punishment are a good combination, and if you use Divine Strike and Divine Path at the same time, the guy will be able to restore his health level faster. It turns out that he will restore health during close combat using the Divine Punishment skill. Or you can use Divine Path to increase your speed and get close to the enemy, and then use Divine Smite or Divine Strike. But the radius of the Divine Punishment is too small, and if the enemies are far away, it will only be able to restore health, so this is not the best choice. Therefore, he decides to choose the Divine Path and the Divine Strike. Having made his decision, the The guy marks the chosen skills in the system, abandoning the divine punishment skill. Now he wonders how Bros and Phaloja are doing, because they could also have encountered these monsters. However, the magical mark on his hand did not appear, which meant that everything was fine with the guys. Now we need to move on before more monsters arrive. From the depths of the cave, the angry growling of approaching monsters is heard, which means Jill leaves just in time. In another part of the cave, Bros is quite successfully using his combat skill Hellfire, destroying everything around him. There are also quite a few monsters around him, but he successfully copes with their attacks. His skill allows him to set each of these monsters on fire, causing them to scream in insane pain and powerlessness. Bros is quite pleased with himself in this fight. Suddenly, the guy begins to hear soft music coming from somewhere in the depths of the cave. Someone is singing, he understands. The monsters also turn around in confusion. An unclear silhouette approaches them all. This is a girl whose fragile ankles bear the remains of broken shackles. She is half naked, with only half-rotted scraps of fabric remaining on her body. The girl walks slowly and sings, seemingly oblivious to the crowd of monsters nearby. Bros understands that it was this girl who set all these ghouls on him with her singing. The girl grins evilly at him in response. Her song continues, shaking the walls around her. Around Bros, a multitude of blurry palms with crooked fingers appear, woven from the purple shadows of this girl's power. It's all the influence of her song, and Bros can't even move, tightly wrapped in its power. With hatred in his burning gaze, he watches the girl approaching him. "What are you going to do?" the guy cries out indignantly. "It's been a while since I've come across such delicious specimens," the girl laughs in response, opening her mouth wide and touching the young man's body with her long, curved tongue. The claw on her hand presses into his stomach, mercilessly piercing until blood appears. She plans to enjoy every bite of this delicious body. Luckily for Buros, Gil is rapidly approaching them. With lightning speed, he strikes the first blow. In a matter of seconds, the guy cuts off the monster's hands, with which she was holding his new friend. Bros watches this battle with an expression of utter shock. "Am I late?" Jill asks with a chuckle. "So Delic didn't kill you?" the monster girl asks, astonished. "You mean him?" Jill replies, throwing the monster's head right at her feet. With a dull thud, the head falls and rolls across the cold cave floor. Gil admits that this ghoul was stronger than all the others, but that didn't stop him from being dealt with in no time. The girl clenches her teeth in rage, looking at the head of her fallen comrade. Her magical song resounds throughout the cave again. Bros tries to warn Gil about the effects of this music. This is a necromancer's song that has a paralyzing effect. Now the girl is confident that victory will be hers. She doesn't have time to understand at what moment Jill attacks. With incredible speed, he pierced the air with his sword, and with a dull crunch, he severed the head of the monster girl, and her body fell to the ground, and the eerie song suddenly stopped. The boy used his new skill, Divine Path, for the first time. And he is strong, Bros thinks. The ensuing silence is interrupted by a soft, hissing sound. The sound makes Gil and Bros tense and hold their breath. A fiery mark suddenly lights up on the palms of both boys, and they realize that Fallujah is in trouble. Their comrade was unlucky enough to encounter a level 55 hellish serpent capable of breathing fire. This evil creature is straight from the underworld, and its body is permeated with hellfire. This monster is too strong, and Fallujah can only defend himself. There can be no talk at all of killing the monster. "Damn!" the guy screams. The giant snake's new attack was so swift and unexpected that the boy didn't even have time to blink, let alone dodge the blow, and was thrown aside like a rag doll. The boy, having huddled up, falls painfully on his back onto the hard stone floor of the cave. The powerful blow causes a powerful stream of bright red blood to spray from his mouth through his tightly clenched teeth. Fallujah's body is pierced by unbearable pain, and he realizes that his situation is completely desperate. "Am I really going to die now?" the boy thinks. And the snake is already heading towards him, greedily opening its huge mouth with sharp fangs. But Gil, who suddenly appeared, prevents the monster from reaching Fallujah. He rushes into a furious attack on the serpent, and his sword, like a deadly whirlwind, begins to rapidly deal one blow after another. The serpent, feeling his strength inexorably fading, begins to attack Gil with even greater fury, with a deafening roar. However, even this does not help the monster win. And with a terrible cry, the snake falls to the ground and crawls away, exhausted. Jill lowers her sword with satisfaction. "Sorry I'm a little late," he smiled at the exhausted Fallujah. "Gil is incredibly strong," the assassin thought. Bros joins the conversation, explaining that he and Gil found nothing of value in their tunnels, which suggests that this is the road that leads to the monster's lair. Fallujah smiles at him, a little tensely. "Are you okay?" Bros asks the boy worriedly. The assassin replies that he is fine and not so easy to kill. But this snake turned out to be too strong. He had never seen anything like it before. What if the king of the monsters kills them easily, since he's much stronger than all these monsters? Bros worries. Gil is sure that it will not be the monster boss that will kill him, but his own fear. After all, fear during a fight only brings you closer to death. It's just the king of the monsters, and no one knows what kind of monsters they will be destined to face beyond the Latona Desert. There is a clear determination shining in the guy's eyes. For the sake of his comrades, and for the freedom of each of them, Gil is ready to fight until his last breath. As if hearing his words, the hellish serpent appears in front of the boys again. Apparently, he had time to rest and gather his strength. "Let's go kill him!" Jill cries out in a warlike voice. Inspired and full of energy, they rush into battle again. "Jill, me first!" Bros shouts loudly at him. He wants to be the first to attack this crawling bastard. His voice is full of energy and fury, and he is eager to fight, unable to contain himself any longer. The monster, enraged and furious by the sudden attack, tries to repel the onslaught with a deafening and pain-filled roar. His attacks are truly full of ferocity and desperate malice. Bros notices that his elemental ability has almost fully recovered. Fallujah also doesn't want to be a burden to others anymore, so she's going to give it her all. He uses his skill, Dezang's Hand. The skill is named after the Lord of the Underworld, who rescues the souls of the dead from the underground court, allowing them to be born again. A huge hand emerged from the ground and grabbed the snake-like monster tightly by its powerful neck. "Jill, come on!" Bro shouts. This guy doesn't need to be told twice. Jill, like lightning, responds to his call, flying into the air and tightly gripping the hilt of her trusty sword. He is ready to deal the killing blow to this monster, and his eyes are burning with determination and lust for battle. The guy rushes forward without missing a single second. He unleashes all his strength, power, and fury on the vulnerable neck of the snake-like monster. With difficulty, the blade of the sword still enters the dense scales of the fiery monster. The hellish serpent's scales are now 20% damaged, and Jill swings for another crushing blow. With each new blow, the monster's scales become more and more damaged. Gradually, his scales become thinner and thinner, and the blade of the sword penetrates deeper and deeper into his flesh. Gil feels the snake's powers leaving him, and this gives the guy even more energy and confidence. The monster's scales cracked, crumbled, and shattered into tiny pieces, and his flesh was exposed, and the blade of the sword, penetrating deeper and deeper, caused him unbearable pain. Gil already understands that this grueling battle will soon be over, and that his victory is inevitable. With a cry of victory, the boy prepares to deliver the final blow. The guy's hand, tightly gripping the hilt of the sword, trembles with tension. Gil rushed forward like a tornado, his weapon firmly in his hands. The blade of his sword pierced the monster's scales with incredible precision. Having completed the blow, the guy calmly jumps off the monster's back onto the hard surface of the cave. He sheathes his sword again until the next battle. "Yes!" Bros shouts enthusiastically. The Hell Serpent is defeated, and Jill receives 200,000 experience points and a level increase. By killing the secret boss, Gil receives a special piece of equipment, the Hellfire Glove, which adds a decent amount of strength, armor, mana, and fire damage. Gil is pleased to receive new equipment, which also significantly increases stats. Equip gear? Another system window asks. Now the guy has a Hellfire Glove on his hand. Bros is extremely surprised that they were separated for only a few hours, and Gil's strength has already increased so much. Who is this guy anyway? They are all distracted from their thoughts by a vague rustling sound in the nearest tunnel of this gloomy cave. The boys take a fighting stance, ready for any attack. Rahidler, already familiar to them, peeks out modestly from around the corner, but no one notices him yet. The guys look at each other with obvious tension on their faces. At the same time, they rise into the air and fall upon the unfortunate monster with a powerful blow. Rahidler squints in shock, completely unprepared for the sudden attack. The unexpected blow throws him several meters to the side, and the monster hits his back painfully on the stone floor of the cave. "Rakidler, why did you come?" Bros cries out indignantly, realizing exactly who they've hit. The desert orc assures the boys that he is simply lost, and that in general, it looks like the Overlord is preparing traps for them all. Traps? No wonder we encountered so many monsters here, Jill thinks. You're lucky to have somehow managed to survive here, the orc is surprised. An enraged Bros demands that Rahidler tell him where the king of the monsters is. Otherwise, he threatens to kill him. The desert orc agrees to take them, especially since the entrance is very close. If you pull any tricks, I'll cut your dick off. Bros continues to get angry. In response, the orc utters several phrases in an incomprehensible language under his breath. Apparently, this is a special key that opens the door to the monster's lair. The heavy door opens smoothly, raising a whole cloud of dust into the air. People freeze right in front of the entrance, trying to see what exactly is behind these doors. At this time, a thunderstorm is raging in the city again. Grandfather Ube watches the stormy weather from the window with a gloomily expression. With determination, a firm step, and unshakable confidence, the man approaches a small cabinet standing alone in the very center of the room, and his gaze is full of expectation. His hands, strong and confident, as if by themselves, reach for the doors of this old closet, his movements precise and quick, and he knows that inside awaits something that will change everything, and he does not intend to hesitate. The room is filled with heavy twilight, and its shadows, as if alive, glide along the walls, creating an oppressive atmosphere. Behind the old and creaky doors of this inconspicuous closet lies something amazing and unexpected. A whole set of shining armor, and, as if created from liquid light, it emits a soft but mesmerizing glow that illuminates the semi-darkness of the room. You hesitated for so long, I thought you'd never open it. Boban's voice suddenly comes from the front door. Uba had previously forbidden him and Sally from entering this room, and they had always wanted to know what was hidden there. It turns out that the man was hiding not only armor there, but also the very hope that one day they would be able to get out of here. Boban recently heard that Oob is gathering a squad to go beyond the Latona Desert, and he is sure that along the way, the squad will definitely encounter the monster that killed his parents. Ever since Boban left this family, he has been training hard with only one goal in mind: to find that monster. So he will definitely go along with Ube. Meanwhile, Gil, Bros, and Phaloja are tensely following their leading orc, Rawhidler. The orc convinces them that he will not deceive them and shows them where the main hall is, where the Lord of the Monsters is. Do you know where they keep the prisoners? Jill asks, looking grimly surprised. Of course, I know everything here. The orc is proud of himself. Jill gives the rest of the guys the command to take out all the prisoners at once, as soon as they enter this hall. However, Bros strongly disagrees. He believes that if Gil saved them once, it doesn't mean anything, and in fact, he and Phaloja will not interfere with him, but on the contrary, will provide all possible assistance. Even his strongest abilities have a limit, the guys are sure. A sudden alarm makes Gil tense. An unknown boss has been detected. The chance of winning is only 10%. Gil is upset because he spent so long leveling up, and even though he doesn't have elemental abilities, he still can't be that weak. Is everything all right, Jill? Asks the assassin. Gil says that's fine. He just doesn't want to drag anyone else into it. He offers his friends to save people while he fights the monster boss. However, Bros will never allow his comrade to fight alone and expose himself to mortal danger. Jill assures everyone that this monster boss is not as simple as they initially thought. Bros is confident that even if the chances of winning are negligible, they will still not retreat and will accept the fight. Jill can't come to terms with this decision. Since childhood, he had solved all his problems on his own, both at school and in kendo classes, which never particularly bothered him, although sometimes he felt a little lonely. However, now he is no longer alone. He has friends who are ready to help and support him. Rahidler shows the boys the entrance to the main hall and asks permission to stay here and not go further with them. Otherwise, the ruler will simply kill him. The boys, frozen in place, look thoughtfully and apprehensively at this gloomy opening, and their gazes are full of doubts and hesitation. They do not know what awaits them behind this dark curtain, and their hearts are squeezed with anxiety. This place, immersed in deep darkness and deathly silence, looks truly gloomy and frightening, and its atmosphere seems to press on them, and they feel a sticky fear that fetters their movements and deprives them of strength. Jill and Barros, exchanging glances of silent understanding and a mixture of anxiety and determination, take the first hesitant step forward. The orc will have to follow them. The boys cautiously enter the huge and lifeless main hall, and their steps, cautious and slow, echo in the eerie silence. To their great surprise and bewilderment, they see a completely empty hall, and nothing disturbs its ominous silence. And the huge throne, towering at the far end, looks abandoned and deserted. It's strange. Why is it so empty here? Rockidler says he doesn't understand anything either, because this place is usually carefully guarded, but now, for some reason, there's not a soul here. Suddenly, everything changes dramatically. The surrounding environment is distorted in a matter of seconds, and the room is filled with loud, harsh, chaotic, and disturbing sounds. What is this? Rahidler is surprised. At this moment, Feloja lets out a painful groan. An unknown force slowly lifts the guy into the air, not allowing him to move. Jill watches the scene tensely, unsure of what exactly to do now. Before them appears the King of Monsters, the leader of the 85th level orcs, Fenrir. The assassin's painful groan, full of despair and agony, turns into a terrible, bloody cough, and blood, like ink, splashes the floor. Gil, gritting his teeth and not taking his eyes off the assassin, thinks furiously, his mind trying to find a way out of this situation. Having made his decision, he suddenly takes off. With lightning speed, he rushes to the previously empty throne on which the King of Monsters now sits. The boy grips the hilt of his sword tighter, rising into the air and preparing to strike. To his surprise, the weapon collides with an unusual shield that appears out of nowhere. No matter how hard the guy tried to reach the monster with the blade of his sword, he couldn't do it. All his efforts were in vain. Gil didn't expect this shield to be so strong. At this time, Bros rushes to the aid of the assassin. He catches the guy before he can hit the ground. Feloja, are you okay? Bros asks worriedly. Meanwhile, Jill is trying to figure out where the King of the Monsters suddenly came from. He parried my blow with such ease, the guy thinks frustratedly. The assassin's hands are shaking from the stress he's experienced, but he still tries to concentrate. If it's hard for you, then don't force yourself, Bros shouts at him. The assassin replies that everything is fine, and he is fine. Bros relaxes a little, focusing on his own attack. He focuses on his elemental powers, calling upon fire to help him. The King of Monsters only watches these pathetic attempts with a smirk, while Bros's body, tense as a string, is already ready to jump and unleash all its power and fury on the new enemy. The man rises into the air, surrounded by a fiery ring of his power. Falosia also gathers the rest of his forces, joining his attack.